Hello, welcome to a new video of Dynasty War, and today we're going to talk about enhancing skill or not, and today's hero is Sima Yi. So a couple days ago I uploaded a funny-ish kind of video, basically redoing my first ever video on YouTube, which I talk about Awakened Sima Yi, and during that time not a lot of people use Sima Yi. I mean right now there's not a lot of people use Sima Yi other than Alliance Dungeon, and I don't think a year ago there were Alliance Dungeons, so nobody really used it. But I awakened him, and I really like him. I still really like him. So let's talk about his main skill, active skill, increasing the damage by 100% and attack speed 53% for all friendly units in the range, nearby range. It didn't tell you how big the range is, but I'm gonna tell you later. I'm gonna show you. It lasts for 18 seconds, but as I've talked about in the last video, sometimes your troops and your heroes get bugged for whatever reason, and they actually use the skill for longer than 18 seconds. And the effect is still there, so you can see that they got bigger and red. They do attack faster and do more damage, even though it's already past 18 seconds. So that's another good thing. So the pre-awakened version only goes up to 75% attack damage, and then 39% attack speed. So the damage is always increased by 5% even before the awakened version. So at 0 out of 10, or even 10 out of 10, 10 out of 15, 15 out of 15, the increase is always 5%. You can only increase this skill by enhancing the skill. You can't do it by upgrading his own level. That wouldn't work because this skill does not depend on his own DPS. Same thing for attack speed. Attack speed varies. The increase varies. Sometimes you get 3% extra, sometimes you get 4% extra, but it doesn't really matter because it's a very strong attack speed. You don't get more attack speed than damage because attack speed is it's a more valuable attribute in this game. So 53% is a lot. You rarely can get more than 53% unless you have a specific hero that can do that one thing. So Tiger Sunjan, for example, can increase Tiger Warriors attack speed up to a higher point, but that's only for Tiger Warriors. We have a couple other heroes that can increase their own attack speed by a crazy amount, and that's it. So in order to give it to a bunch of troops, Sima Yi is the only version. And if you think about it, just this skill 100% plus 53% attack speed, you're basically multiplying one troop by a lot already, because 100% is times 2. You basically get another troop, but increasing attack speed, you can't really just think about, oh, another 53%, but the math is not like that. But you do get a lot more. Basically, the DPS output, it's close to 3 times as much as one troop. So if you do Alliance Dungeon, that's very good. Do anything, it's very good. But let's talk about the Awakening skill. My Sima Yi right now, it's 3 out of 5, which increased the range by 70%. You get 40% when it's 1 out of 5, and then each time you level it up, you get 15 more percent. And at 5 out of 5, you get a 100% increase in range. However, a year ago, this skill was very confusing because it was not clear. I don't think it worked a year ago because I was comparing my Awakened Sima Yi to a non-Awakened Sima Yi, and the skill looked the same thing. The range looked the same, so I don't think it worked earlier. And that is the reason that I haven't really upgraded his Awakening skill at all. But right now, I realized in the past couple of months, they fixed it. You can actually tell the difference between an Awakened version and a pre-Awakened version. And the 70% actually matters. It's actually bigger, and I calculated it. It actually makes sense. So I'm going to talk about that as well. Why is the Awakening skill useful or not? All right. And I think there is also another thing to talk about in the range, because you can see that it's a circle around surrounding Sima Yi. And a year ago, I was trying to figure out if it's increasing the radius or the area by 100%. But then I realized it didn't work a year ago, and then it doesn't work. So right now, this video, I'm gonna talk about, is it worth to upgrade his Awakening seal, or is it even worth getting him awakened, because it's a lot of investment after you do that. And let's take a look right now. Okay, so right here I listed the basic attribute for his skill level at from 10 to 15, and basically you can see that it actually increased by 5% per level, the damage increase, and then the attack speed increase actually increased by 3%, and then at the last level it's 2%. As I said, this varies. I'm not entirely sure about this column, but the damage, I can guarantee you, it goes like this. So getting the 5 extra level is definitely worth it, because you're not just getting 25%, you're getting 25% more, but actually you're getting a 33% increase, because you have to look at it this way. You are started with 75%, and now you're getting 25% more. 25 is a third of 75, so you're actually getting 33% more instead of just a flat 25%. So that's, I mean, that's already a very good deal. You should get it. On top of that, obviously you also have the attack speed, which in total you have 14%, which is close to a half, in like a 50. I think it's around 30 to 40% increase total. So another very good reason to level that up, and because it does not just apply to him or the heroes or troops, it applies to everyone in the area, including troops and heroes. So the more people you stack inside his area, the more benefit you're getting. So it's difficult to say how much actual benefit you're getting. It's difficult to calculate because it depends what type of troops you put in there and how many you put in there and the stats of these troops. But if you're going to awaken him, you probably should plan to upgrade his 5 level, a 5 skill, because if not, there's no reason that you need to awaken him, because 10 extra level on him doesn't get him much stronger. Now the other thing that we have to talk about is the awakening skill, which is much more complicated to talk about. I listed the awakening level from here 1 to 5 and what it does. At first it's 40% increase and 100% increase, and I checked the basic Sima Yi's range is 6 tiles. This is the radius of the circle, so it's 6 tiles away from him all the direction. So if it's once you awaken him, you get 40%. That's 8.4 tiles. That's 2.4 extra tiles already, and you can calculate that by finding 40% of 6, or just multiply 6 times 1.4. In this case, at 5 out of 5, you actually get 12 tiles radius, which is extremely big. 12 tiles away from the hero. All the troops in that circle will be included. So that's one way to calculate it, and then the other way is getting extra area, which is different. Which this is the thing that I was talking about in the last clip. Does that skill imply range? Does range implies radius or just the area? Because it makes a difference. This is the area of the main skill, which is just 6 square times pi, and you get this. And then if you take 40%, 55%, and 100% of this, and then you calculate back the radius, you can see it's actually much smaller than the previous one. So if the awakening skill is referring to 40% bigger area, you're actually getting 1.1 farther radius, which is not that big of a difference. It's actually a very small difference. In fact, even if you make it 100% of the entire circle, the area of the circle, and then you calculate the radius back, you're actually getting 2.49 extra tile in all direction in the radius, which in this case is actually just a little bit better than the first calculation. Which, if this was the case, then this awakening skill is not worth upgrading, because this increase is very small. As you can see, you don't even get 3 extra tile in radius. But if this is the calculation, then it's a much better deal, because you actually get way more coverage for his skill. So that was the main question that I had a year ago, and it was not answered until I decided to make the last video, and then I went and checked again. So because I have this one, I have the 70%, so I can check to see what his radius is. If his radius is 10.2 or close to around 10, then I know it's using this calculation. But if it's like around 7 and 8, then I know it's expanding the area by 70% instead of the radius. So I calculated, and luckily it is the radius instead of the area. So right here at the bottom, I have the correct calculation for everything. So right now, my Sima Yi actually covers 10 tiles from him in all directions in a circle. What that means is it's actually covering a 327 square tile area around him. Wait, but what does this number actually tells me? And why did I list the area of coverage by each awakening level? And this is a very important calculation that you have to keep in mind. If you're not just using Sima Yi in Alliance Dungeon, if you're using Sima Yi in Alliance Dungeon at awakening level 1 is enough, because Alliance Dungeon, most of your troops stays together, and it doesn't really matter. But if you use Sima Yi like me in another type of battle, that your troops will spread out, this is very important, because you can calculate the total area. The total area is 40 by 40. Okay, that's you can calculate that. I think it's a 1600, and then what that means is, why do I have to calculate total area? I want to know how much Sima Yi can cover in the entire area in the entire map. And you can do that by taking the area that you can calculate from the skill and divide that by 1600. So you get a little bit about 28% of the entire map. 28% of the map. What that means is you're covering more than a quarter of the map if you have a 5 out of 5 awakening Sima Yi. So if you can cover a whole corner of the map, all your troops in there are getting buffed by this crazy amount, 100% damage and 53% attack speed. But let's not take a look at the entire map, because it doesn't really make sense to take a look at the entire map, because once you attack, the 18 seconds that you have, usually you're in only half of the map or the corner of the map, which is 1/4, which I indicated in here with a quadrant. Percent of quadrant. If you had a 5 out of 5, you basically, as I said, you're covering more than a quarter of the map. You can cover the entire quadrant of a map. And that's crazy, because you attack, or at least me, when I attack in the corner, basically, even when I reach inside, all the troops in my circle are getting buffed, and they're much more stronger. However, I'm not a 5 out of 5, I'm only a 3 out of 5, so I can't really cover 100% of the quadrant. I can cover 82% of the quadrant, which is why some of my troops, when they start to diverge, they lose the buff. But the troops inside, they're gonna stay very strong, and maybe I only need to get him one more extra awakening level, then it will cover entire quadrant. Basically 97%. It's close to 100%, close to getting entirely a fourth of the entire base. So if my Sima Yi is still alive and buffing at the center of the base, probably the whole center square is being buffed by his skill, which is extremely strong. And if you've seen the last video where I messed up Guan Yu, and I still basically 3-flagged that battle because the amount of troops that's being buffed, and they're just very strong, and they attack faster, they do much more damage. Well, basically they do double the damage and attack much faster. That makes them extremely strong. And if you do use Sima Yi in basic battle other than Alliance Dungeon, you probably have to upgrade this skill at least a couple of times. Just the first couple of times probably not enough. The area gets bigger and bigger, not proportionally, because why is the reason you get actually more distance when you increase the radius and not the area? Because the area is calculated with radius square. So every 15% you increase, you're actually getting more than 15% in area. And for the same reason, if you only increase the area by a certain percentage, you have to take the root of that to find the radius, which is much smaller. Basically, if you understand how to calculate some math for a circle, you understand how this math is calculated. And for that reason, if you just look at the 5 out of 5, it's extremely powerful, covering a quarter of the map. I probably want to do that pretty soon when I have enough Wei Jade. I probably want to do this so that I can use him easier with less mistakes. Or I guess less mistake, because a bigger area, that means I can use his skill earlier, and even if he wanders a little bit off, my troops will still be in range. So hopefully this helps you understand a little bit better on Sima Yi's awakening skill, and if you're gonna awaken him and use him, hopefully you will get his skill up so that you get the most benefit out of him. And that is it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.